When love builds a home, fear should never have the key. But in this house, every baby's cry could awaken something darker than death itself. Kangu and his young wife Amina had been married for only 6 months, but it already felt like they had been searching for a home forever. Since their wedding, they had lived in the back room of Amina's elder sister's house in Kinshasa, where privacy did not exist. Every evening turned into fights about electricity bills, missing buckets, and whose turn it was to sweep the yard. Kangu, who worked as a junior clerk in a transport office, felt small every time he came home and saw his clothes folded beside his nephew's uniforms. He often told Amina, "A man isn't a man until he owns a roof, even a leaking one." So when a friend told him about a 2-bedroom flat for rent in Matung district, Kangu's heart filled with hope. He took Amina there on a hot Saturday afternoon. The building wasn't new, but it looked strong with tall walls and a big gate. The compound was neat, with 8 flats around a small yard where a tailor sat sewing. Compared to the noisy house they lived in, this felt like peace. The landlord, Mozio Kabaya, was a tall, gray-haired man in his late 50s. He wore an old shirt and had a face that showed many troubles. When he opened the gate, he studied them for a moment before greeting in French-accented Lingala. "Bonjour, you must be here for the flat." "Yes, Papa," Kangu replied quickly. "We heard you are renting. We would like to see it." Kabaya led them to the flat. The paint was fading, and some tiles were cracked, but to Amina, who had cooked for months in her sister's smoky backyard, it was beautiful. She ran her hand along the counter and whispered, "At last, we can breathe." Kangu noticed the seriousness in the landlord's eyes as he spoke. "There are rules in this compound. No loud parties, no pets, no strangers moving in without my word." They both nodded fast. "Yes, Papa, we agree." Then Kabaya stopped, cleared his throat, and said something that made Amina stare. "And absolutely no babies in this compound." For a moment, there was silence. Amina blinked, unsure if she heard right. "Excuse me, Papa? No babies?" Kabaya's face turned hard. "You heard me. Couples with children must look elsewhere. Babies are not allowed." Kangu laughed nervously. "Ah, Papa. Maybe you mean no noise. We will stay quiet." But Kabaya shook his head firmly. "No babies. Not today. Not ever. If you cannot accept this, then leave." Amina looked at her husband in shock. "Kangu, what does he mean? Who forbids children?" The tailor, Mama Solange, who was sewing nearby, whispered, "That's how he is. Don't ask questions. He just hates babies." Kangu felt uneasy but desperate. He turned to Amina with pleading eyes. "My wife, please. Let's not lose this chance. We have searched too long. Maybe it's just a small rule." "Maybe he only hates noise," Amina frowned. "But what if—" Kangu stopped her softly. "Please. Just for now. It's only us two." Kabaya watched them closely. When Kangu finally said, "We agree, Papa. We'll follow your rules," the landlord nodded. He took out the rent papers, pointed at one line with his long finger, and said, "Sign here. And remember, no babies." Kangu hesitated, then signed. When they held the keys in their hands, neighbors like Jonas the taxi driver and Madame Chancel, the Akara seller, greeted them warmly. "Welcome. You are lucky. This compound is peaceful. But remember, Papa Kabaya doesn't smile at nonsense." That night, lying on their mattress in the new flat, Amina whispered, "Kangu, I don't like this rule. A home without children isn't a home." He pulled her close and said, "Don't worry. For now we are safe. When the time comes, no man will stop us." The first few months in the new flat felt like heaven. Amina loved waking up without her sister banging the door. She loved cooking without smoke burning her eyes. She loved lying on the bed without noisy nephews jumping on it. She kept the house shining, so clean that even Mama Solange admired her. "Amina, your home shines like a palace," Are you expecting the president? She teased. Kangu finally felt like a real man. Every evening, he whistled while unlocking the gate. This is my house, he whispered proudly, even though it belonged to Kabaya. To him, providing a roof meant respect. But life brings surprises. One rainy morning, Amina sat on the bed holding her stomach. When Kangu rushed in, she said softly, "Kangu, I think I am carrying a child." He froze, then smiled wide. "A child? Our child?" He lifted her and spun her around until she laughed. They prayed together, thanking God for the first fruit of their love. But that evening, as Amina washed dishes, she looked worried. "Kangu, what about Kabaya's rule? He said no babies. What if he finds out?" Kangu waved his hand. "Forget that man. He can't control life. We pay rent. We have rights. Let him shout if he wants. I am a man. No one will stop me." Still, they knew Kabaya wasn't a man to take lightly. His eyes were sharp like a hawk. He noticed everything. If Amina gained even a little weight, he would ask why. So they made a plan. Amina started wearing large wrappers and loose dresses, even when the Kinshasa heat was painful. When neighbors teased her, she laughed. "Too much foo-foo," she joked. Mama Solange winked. "Amina, are you sure it's just food? You glow like a mother." Amina smiled nervously. "Amina, just starch, Mama. Too much at night." When Kabaya walked through the yard, Amina always carried something. A bowl. A bag to hide her belly. She never sat outside for long, and avoided talking to him. If he called her, she went inside quickly. But neighbors are never blind. Jonas, the taxi driver, smiled at Kangu. "My friend, congratulations in advance. But be careful. That old man will not like it." Kangu pressed a finger to his lips. "Please, Jonas, don't say anything." By the 6th month, the secret became hard to keep. Amina moved slower, her back ached, and her belly showed. She stopped fetching water, so Kangu did it after work. When Madame Chancel asked why Amina no longer bought a kara, Kangu lied. "She's busy learning online business." Even clinic visits were secret. Amina wrapped herself in layers of cloth, and Kangu took taxis far away so no one saw them leave together. One day, Amina almost got caught. The landlord saw her returning from the market with a big baby basket that couldn't fit in any bag. His eyes narrowed like a blade. "What are you carrying?" he asked coldly. Amina smiled quickly. "It's for my sister's child," she said softly. Kabaya stared at her belly, then at her face. His eyes turned cold. "Do not break my rule, Amina. I warned you both." Then he turned stiffly and walked away without another word. That night, Amina broke down in tears. "Kangu, he knows. He will throw us out." But Kangu held her close and said firmly, "Let him try. He cannot stop us. Even if he brings soldiers, I will never leave my family." The delivery day came that same week. Amina told the neighbors she was going to her mother's village to visit family. They left at dawn while the gatekeeper was still half asleep. By midday, Amina was in a small clinic across town, fighting through a long night of labor. At sunrise, she gave birth to a baby girl, little Enola. For 2 weeks, they stayed with Amina's mother, resting and letting the baby grow stronger. Back at the compound, when neighbors asked where the couple had gone, Kabaya shrugged. "I don't know, and I don't care, as long as they return without trouble." When Kangu finally came back, he carried only a small bag. Amina followed later, holding the baby wrapped tightly in cloth. The baby was small and quiet, and no one noticed at first. To avoid suspicion, Amina wore another huge wrapper and pretended to be sick from travel. The neighbors, who already guessed, exchanged looks, but said nothing. For a few weeks, life stayed calm. Amina tried to hush little Eni's cries, feeding her quickly whenever she stirred. At night, She and Kangu worked hard to hide the baby's sounds. When Ini cried, Amina pressed her gently to her chest. They stuffed blankets across the windows to block the noise. Sometimes Kangu even carried the baby outside at night, walking slowly in the corridor, praying the landlord wouldn't appear. For weeks, their secret stayed safe. Kabaya either didn't know or pretended not to see. But babies can't stay silent forever. One hot afternoon, Ini's cry rang out sharp and loud, echoing through the quiet compound like a trumpet. They tried everything to calm her, but the baby kept crying. Then came the sound of heavy, angry footsteps. Kabaya banged on their door, bang, bang, bang. Kangu jumped up in fear and opened the door a little. But the landlord pushed it wide open and stormed inside. His face was hard, his eyes fierce. "You think you can hide from me? I said no babies here." He pointed at the crying bundle in Amina's arms. "You broke my rule. You must leave at once." Amina hugged Ini tightly and cried, "Papa, please, this is our child. Where will we go in the middle of the night?" But Kabaya's voice was like steel. "I don't care. I warned you. No babies in my compound now." The neighbors gathered outside, whispering. Some pitied the couple. Others shook their heads. "What kind of man hates babies so much?" Someone murmured. And it was then that Amina felt something cold inside her. This wasn't about noise. Kabaya's hatred was strange and deep. After that night of shouting and banging, the compound felt heavy. A shadow hung in the air. The neighbors still greeted Amina and Kangu, but with quiet eyes full of questions. Mama Solange, once warm and chatty, now spoke carefully. Jonas, the taxi driver who always joked, only nodded and said softly, "Courage, my brother." Before walking away, fear became their daily meal. Amina barely slept. At every sound, she woke and clutched her baby close. "Kangu," she whispered. "What if he comes again? What if he hurts her?" "One." But Kangu, though afraid, forced a calm voice. "Don't worry, he just talks. He won't do anything. We pay rent. He can't throw us out." Yet inside, he knew Kabaya's threats were never empty. Every evening when Kangu came home, he sometimes saw the landlord standing silently in the yard, staring up at their window. He didn't shout or knock. He just stood there, like a statue. When Kangu greeted him nervously, only then would Kabaya turn away. The neighbors began whispering their own stories. One evening, while Amina washed clothes, Madame Chantal, the Akara seller, leaned close. "My daughter, do you think you're the first to bring a baby here?" "You're not." Amina froze. "What do you mean, Mama?" Madame Chantal looked around before speaking again. "There was another family before you. Yes, Thierry and his wife. They had a baby boy, sweet and chubby. But one night, he died suddenly. No sickness, no fever. He just slept and never woke up. The parents ran away crying before sunrise. After that, Kabaya made his rule no babies ever again." Amina's stomach tightened. "But, are you saying Kabaya killed the baby?" Madame Chantal shook her head quickly. "I didn't say that. Only God knows. But since then, everyone fears this house. That's why he warns before renting." Later that week, Kangu quietly asked Jonas, "Brother, tell me the truth. What do you know about Kabaya's rule?" Jonas looked around and spoke softly. "You're stubborn, my brother. You were warned. That man has a dark past. Long ago, another tenant had a child here. The baby died too, same way. In the night, no sickness. People say the house is cursed. They say Kabaya's wife died giving birth here, and her spirit still cries. Some say he made sacrifices. Others say he's just afraid the same pain will return. But one thing is sure. Babies never live long in this compound." The words hit Kangu like stones. He returned home restless, pacing as Amina breastfed little Ini. He told her everything, and she held the baby tighter. eyes wide with fear. "We can't stay, Kangu. We must leave before something happens to her." But Kangu shook his head. "And go where? We have no house, no money. We'll stay and pray. Nothing will happen to our child." That night, while Ini cried softly, Amina heard footsteps near their window. She peeked through the curtain and saw Kabaya again. He stood still under the moonlight, staring up at their flat, his lips moving as if whispering something she couldn't hear. She pulled the curtain shut and trembled. "Why does he watch us like that?" she thought. Deep down, she knew this wasn't just anger or rules. It was something darker, something tied to sorrow, something that lived in him. Since Kangu refused to leave, Amina did her best to keep peace. She sang lullabies to cover Ini's cries, stuffed clothes into the windows to block sound, and even walked softly so no floorboard would creak. But babies will be babies. Sometimes Ini's sharp little cries cut through the silence of night, and each time, the shadow of Kabaya returned. Sometimes his footsteps, sometimes his fist pounding on their door. Sometimes Kabaya's fist pounded on the door. Other times, he simply stood in the compound, staring at their window and listening. Once, Amina woke at 3 a.m. and saw him leaning on the gate, his eyes fixed on their window, as if waiting for something unseen. She held Ini close and whispered, "This man won't rest until our child is gone." One stormy night, rain hammered the zinc roof, while wind rattled the windows. Ini cried louder than ever before. No amount of rocking helped. Amina was frantic. She paced the room, tried to feed and soothe her baby. But nothing worked. Then came a loud thud outside. Heavy, slow footsteps. Before Kangu could react, the door shook. Kabaya's voice thundered over the storm. "Enough! You think you can defy me? I warned you. No babies." Kangu's anger boiled. He threw the door open, rain splashing in. "Why, Papa? Why do you hate babies? What did they do to you?" Neighbors rushed out despite the rain. Jonas held a lantern. Mama Solange wrapped herself in cloth. Madame Chantal shielded herself with a frying pan like an umbrella. They gathered around the veranda, eager to hear the truth. Kabaya stood still. For a moment, it seemed he would strike, but then his shoulders dropped. He stepped back and said weakly, "You want to know why? You really want to know?" The rain fell harder. The compound went silent. He lifted his trembling hands like a man confessing to heaven. "Years ago, in this house, I had a wife. Her name was Malu. She was my light, my joy. She carried our first child, a boy. But the night she went into labor, right inside that back room, something went wrong. She screamed. She bled. The baby cried. Once. Just once. Then both went cold. My wife died. My son died. Since that day, I've never known peace." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Amina felt tears rise. Kabaya's voice cracked as sorrow mixed with anger. After that night, every tenant who brought a baby here faced tragedy. Babies died in their sleep. No sickness, no warning. Just silence in the morning. I buried 3 with my own hands. 3. Tell me, is that not a curse? Is that not punishment? I can't watch it again. I can't hear another child cry, knowing they may never wake. That's why I said no babies. Not because I hate them, but because I fear for them. I fear death will come again." He fell to his knees in the rain, weeping. "Do you think I enjoy living alone like a ghost? I made the rule to save others from my pain. But you broke it." The neighbors stood frozen. Mama Solange whispered, "So this is the truth." Jonas shook his head slowly. "We thought he was cruel. But he's just a man, bleeding inside." Amina clutched Ini tightly. She had once hated Kabaya, but now she saw a man haunted by his past. Yet her mother's heart screamed louder than pity. If the curse was real, her baby was in danger. She turned to Kangu, trembling. We can't stay here, Kangu. We can't risk her life. Kabaya lifted his tear-streaked face. If you love your child, he said softly, take her far away. This house does not forgive. Rain poured harder, like the heavens mourning with him. In that moment, everyone understood this wasn't an ordinary landlord. This was a man trapped in his grief. His sorrow had poisoned the very walls of his home. From that night, the compound was never the same. Some pitied him. Some feared him. Others whispered that his pain had cursed the house. But for Kangu and Amina, the truth brought only terror. Every cry from Ini felt like a countdown. Amina barely slept. She watched her baby breathe, terrified. Each breath might be the last. She prayed aloud, "Oh God, protect my child. Don't let sorrow touch her." Kangu tried to be strong, but fear ate him inside. He hated leaving the home they fought to find, yet he feared the shadow within it. Each day at work, he dreaded returning to tragedy. One evening, he told Jonas, "Brother, I don't know what to believe. Is it a curse or just fear?" Jonas sighed. Sometimes, fear itself becomes a curse. Don't test it. Then one dreadful night, fear became real. The air was hot and sticky. Sweat glued clothes to their skin. Suddenly, Ini began to cough. At first soft, then sharp. Her tiny body shook. Her breathing grew shallow. Amina screamed, "Kangu, something's wrong!" They panicked, fanning her, offering milk, but nothing worked. Her lips turned pale. Amina fell to the floor crying, "God, no! Not my child!" Neighbors rushed in. Mama Solange shouted, "Take her to the hospital." Jonas grabbed his keys, ready to drive. But before they could move, Kabaya pushed through the crowd. He dropped to his knees beside the baby, weeping like a broken man. "No, not again. Please, spare this child. Spare her." He lifted his face to the heavens, praying through tears. The compound, usually full of gossip, turned into a place of prayer. Some cried to God. Some called on ancestors. Others just wept. The night filled with pleading voices. Then, just as suddenly as it began, Ini's coughing slowed. Her breath steadied. Color returned to her lips. The room filled with gasps of relief. Amina sobbed, hugging her baby tightly. Kangu fell to his knees, crying, "Thank you, God. Thank you." But Kabaya, seeing the baby breathe again, turned away, his shoulders trembling. "This house won't let her live long," he said quietly. "Take her far away before it happens again." The next morning, eyes red from tears, Kangu and Amina made their decision. They packed their few belongings. The neighbors gathered, helping with small gifts of food and coins. Mama Solange hugged Amina. "It's better to lose a house than a child," she whispered. "You'll find another home." Jonas placed a hand on Kangu's shoulder. "You're not running, brother. You're choosing life." As they carried their bags to the gate, Kabaya stood watching. He looked tall but broken, like a tree struck by lightning. His voice was low and full of sorrow. "Forgive me," he whispered. "I only wanted to protect you. But my house, it's already a graveyard." The rain had stopped, but the compound stayed silent, heavy with truth. Thank you for listening to this story. Share your thoughts in the comments, give it a thumbs up, and send it to someone who loves good tales. Subscribe for more stories like this. Until next time, goodbye.